this is our episode 4 of the Meet Huxley podcast, Embracing Failure and Success. I wanted to talk to you today about failure, working with many people over the past 20 years, both as an entrepreneur, business manager, consultant, and advisor. I have this impression that there are many people out there, leaders, small business owners, that see failure as a bad thing. And when they hear the word "I failed," that has a borrowed meaning of this is something that I should be ashamed of, hide, feel bad about, and not talk about it ever, and then just try to move away from that. I wanted to hear your thoughts about failure because, of course, over the course of my career, I have my own thoughts and experience about failure, and I wanted to hear your thoughts about failure.
Specifically regarding your question, I think that very often people are afraid to talk about their failures. But I think that one of the things that happens when you do talk about your failures is that people can relate to those failures and they don't see, like, especially as in our roles as advisors, when we talk about our failures and how we've overcome them, it actually gives hope to the person listening to us, as opposed to if we were to never have any failures and everything we do works according to plan. They may feel like we're an alien species that doesn't fail, and any advice that we give them doesn't really apply to them because they're not as capable as we are, or whatever the case may be. But when you are open with those failures, I think it makes you more relatable to the people that you're talking to as an advisor.
I am guilty as charged because I used to be that very person that I described. I used to be ashamed of all of my shortcomings, and I used to be really embarrassed about even talking about it at all. It came to me not too long ago, maybe 5 years ago, the realization that failure is part of every journey and even part of any success story. It has not one, but many failed attempts before you actually get your success. And the example that I'm going to give you is actually an example about myself. I'm going to ask you the same thing, by the way, for you to give me an example of a situation that didn't work so well for you, but came through and then learned from it. But for me, I think one of the main examples and things that I remember a few years after I've finished my MBA, and I was activated on all cylinders. I wanted to create new ventures. I wanted to create new businesses. I wanted to make new ideas come to life. And the way that I found to do that was through joining forces with other people and helping them make their idea a possibility by helping them create a business around that and kind of selling that idea and creating a factory that could deliver that to the public. I took a few partners and we started a software company. Discussions in the beginning were a little truncated because we spent probably 1 year, maybe a little bit more, trying to get investment to that idea without any success. So we pitched the idea to dozens of people and we're not getting anywhere. Back then, the investment scene wasn't as prolific as it is today. We tried really hard to get our idea across. But at the end of that period, we were really trying to figure out what to do. And then the idea that we came to realize was that we needed more partners because only the two of us were not going to be able to, we wouldn't be able to attract enough interest from people that might be giving us the investment that we needed. So we took 2 additional partners and then we gave them equal share of the organization without them having to pretty much do anything upfront. That partner and I had already spent almost 2 years working on development, working on creating the product, finding the right market to our product. And we had just taken 2 freeloaders to our company. We ended up getting the investment that we wanted. Maybe that was what we needed to get started. But what I thought was horribly executed was that the rules of engagement, meaning the rules of what each partner would need to do, were not discussed beforehand. Everybody had a different expectation in their heads in terms of what they should accomplish, what their responsibilities, what their duties. opportunities. And 2 years later, we were breaking that partnership completely. The company was sold to other people that were interested in the software that we had created in the 2 years since. The failure was we should have discussed how to be partners right beforehand. We needed to have this discussion of what were my expectations of you as my partner, and what were my duties to you as a partner. And instead, we just kind of took all of our excitement, inspiring ideas, and we just kind of pulled together and hope for the best. So the failure was, don't hope for the best, work for the best, and align your expectations beforehand, because there's nothing worse than feeling disappointed with somebody that you trusted your whole life to. Russell, let me ask you this. Now that I've kind of spilled my guts here and told you all my story about partners. And I know that in a previous episode, I told you that I had already decided not to take partners anymore. And this is why. I thought that experience pretty much sealed the deal for me. I was not ready to open up for any new partnerships. And I think with the age and also with maturity, it came to a point where I said, you know what, I can now. Because it's only a matter of setting the right expectations from the beginning. This is my story. Tell me a story that you have that happened either with yourself or with somebody that you've helped, you or them had to overcome, like a moment of failure, and how you learned from that.
It's quite a few. I'll tell you a story that this was a huge shift in my entire life after this point, and this was in 2010. I was actually a comedian at one point. Sorry, 2012 actually. This is when I started to actually make YouTube videos. I was terrified of actually approaching people and talking to strangers. And of course, you can't really have that fear when you're doing YouTube videos for the public. The first time I made a video, let me actually back up and explain what these videos were. At least the first videos that I was creating, they were to actually go up to women in Miami, ask them on a date, something like that. So it's a comedy approach. And so I was terrified of doing that. Many things happened in that first video, which completely changed my life. The first is that video actually went viral. It got over 1 million views in the first week. This video that I created just for fun actually ended up turning my whole job. I was actually starting to make videos every week after that point. But even more important with that video was that I learned not to be afraid by the end of the day. So we went out in Miami Beach on a Saturday morning and ended filming on the Saturday night, probably 10 to 12 hours of filming. When I first started to do it, I was terrified. I'd never done anything like that before. But the fact that I had a cameraman behind me kind of forced me into the position to do it anyway, right? If it was nobody else relying on me to do this, I probably would have backed out and not done it. But I had a partner actually expecting me to produce videos for this channel, and so it kind of forced me to do it. What I still started to realize was it actually became fun. The failure, when I would go up to these women and make a joke and say, do you want to go on a date? I was terrified of doing it at first, but as I got rejected over and over, it actually became easy. That feeling of failure became repetitive. I no longer started to fear it because I just got rejected, 10 times earlier in the day. 11th one is not going to really harm me at all. And then the other thing that I realized, even more so than just the fact that failure isn't really affecting me, is that failure actually became fun. This channel was a comedy channel. When I was getting rejected, it actually made the best comedy. To see these people actually reject me and capture it on camera, those were actually the best reactions. If people I went up to and made a joke and they started laughing, that's kind of like the reaction you would expect, but it's probably not the best for a video that we were creating. I actually started to enjoy the rejection, ironically, enjoy the rejection more than the people that wanted to, talk to me and engage with me. Flipping that entire thought of failure on its head, meaning I'm actually going out expecting to get rejected. Now the expectation of succeeding is not, there's no pressure there, because I'm expecting to fail. Ironically, ended up happening again is when I went in there with no expectations, that's when I would actually have the best results, right? When you actually are trying to do something, so you're trying to put all the effort you can into doing something, there's like a sense, like an anxiety sort of mood or vibe that you give off to the other person, and I think that they can sense that. But if you go into an interaction where you don't really have any expectations, if whatever happens is good or bad, it doesn't matter, then I think the other person is a lot more relaxed and they're more receptive to what you have to say. And what I found out is that resulted in better results. So that entire day was something that completely shifted my mindset on failure. I actually started to go out and expect failure, ended up getting better results after that.
One thing that I would say I can personally translate you just said into business? How can we actually apply any of that to business and maybe some small business owners listening to this now? Number one, the fear of failure can stop you from taking risks and accomplishing what you actually want to accomplish. Fear of failure is crippling and it's stopping you from actually taking the next step. Then success is completely out of question. You cannot achieve success but with taking some calculated risks or some risks at all. And as Russell said, once you overcome the fear of failure, everything else is just a consequence of you trying. Never let your fear of failure prevent you from even trying, because if you don't try, you're not getting it, period. The most surefire way of not getting success is not trying. To Russell's point, I think the biggest learning that I get from your experience, Russell, if I could translate that into business, is once you understand that failure is not an option, it's just what it happens when you try, then you continue trying. And you try it again, and you try it again, and you try it again, until the actual act of trying becomes just nature. It's almost like breathing. Keep trying. I can tell you tales of countless failed attempts that I had to overcome over the past decades in trying to do business and trying to create companies and grow companies. But for every day that I didn't try, there was only one certainty. I was not getting any. And for every day that I did try, I had a chance of succeeding. How would you translate that into business world?
Well, I agree with what you said, but I think that I might actually take that a step further, which is that, like, when it comes to, and I know you have a different sort of way of looking at failure in this regard. I know we have a lot of similarities, but similar to my story, like, I actually try to fail. In other words, like, let's just take a business as an example. If we have a business and we have a goal of $1 million, let's say, or even less, let's just say our goal for this business is to generate $100,000 or $200,000 or something like that. It's very attainable. And if that's the goal, then we'll probably achieve it. But if we have a goal to make 10 million or $1 billion, then the chances of failure are much higher. But now you're actually striving to do something that is a lot more difficult, more likely to fail. If I set the goal at 100,000, the chances of failure are very low. But if I set the goal at $1 billion, the chances of failure are very high if that's the goal. What I've realized for the last 10 years is that when you set that goal really high, something so high that the chances of failure are high, that even if you do fail, you're going to end up succeeding in a sense. The goal is $10 million and I fail because I hit 9 million. Well, I technically failed, but if I had set the goal at 100,000, I would have succeeded. And that success is actually nowhere close than the failure at $9 million. The fact of it being a failure, for me at least, what I've learned is that failure actually is a good thing. And not only do you set your sights a lot higher, but you will also learn from those failures too, right? If you succeed, there's not much to really learn from. All of the people that I listen to and all the athletes that I feel have the greatest success, they've all said that their failures have led to their greatest successes because they learn from those failures. Whereas when you succeed, there's really not much to learn. Some of the, like a boxer recently, his name's Tyson Fury. He became the best boxer in the world. And what happened after that was actually that he became an alcoholic and went down a downward spiral because everything he had achieved that he had ever wanted. And at that point, there was nothing else to do. No mission in life. There's no goals. He achieved everything he wanted to achieve and then went down this depressing spiral downwards with drugs and alcohol. What got him out of it was to become the champion again. He had a goal of becoming a champion. Every day he woke up with a structure. I have to do X, Y, Z in order to achieve this goal. And he got his life back on track. Yeah, I've always tried to actually fail because failure will lead you to achieve more as well as learn more.
This is an interesting perspective on failure. What you're saying is that success is actually a journey that is made of 1,000 failures, not necessarily a destination. Because if you reach a destination, you stop driving. We should always set our goalpost a little further ahead of the path that we're walking. And then once we get there, we just kind of reset the goalpost a little further down and we keep trying. We keep failing forward.
The flow channel, there's a flow state, and that flow state is kind of like when you do things almost involuntarily, it's subconscious. You're not actually actively thinking. This is commonly experienced in sports. For example, with basketball, you're playing basketball and you shoot a ball. Sometimes you actually actively think about the entire mechanism of shooting, right? I have to bend my knees in a certain way. I have to bring the ball up 90 degrees and then shoot it, and it has to roll off the fingertips. And when you're actively thinking about all those steps, then you're probably not going to be shooting the basketball as well as you possibly could, as if it was just completely subconscious. When you get into the flow, all of those steps happen without you even thinking, and it happens perfectly. The state of getting into flow is, for that chart, there's like a sweet spot. It's called the flow channel. Other people say that it's like a 4% increase in challenge. What I mean by that is that if you have a goal and it's too easy, then you're going to be bored because it's going to be too easy. There's no challenge and you're probably going to give it up. But on the other hand, if you have a goal that's too outrageous, like maybe what I said before with a goal of your business making $1 billion, well, now you're going to have anxiety because the goal is so high and so far out of reach. In your subconscious mind, you think you're never going to get there. And so this flow channel is kind of that sweet spot in between boredom, in between anxiety. They say maybe a 4% challenge. If you're doing something, then maybe increase the challenge by 4%. So that it's a little bit more challenging and that you actually have to strive to achieve something. The challenge by 4%, and then you achieve that, and then you increase the goal again by a little bit more, like 4% more, and then you achieve that. And you're always in this kind of in-between state, which is above boredom and less than anxiety, but you're always moving forward and progressing forward and increasing the challenge and achieving more and more gradually over time.
And I wanted to wrap this conversation inviting the business owners and the visionary entrepreneurs watching us to set their goalposts slightly above what you're currently doing. Get yourself out of the comfort zone, try something new, try something harder, and get just enough anxiety to get you to that next level. I'd like to finish this podcast with a quote that I love from John Maxwell, which is fail often, fail fast, but always fail forward. You get the point from this quote that number one, failure is not an option. Number two, it's needed for you to learn from your own mistakes and become a better version of yourself. And as Russell put it so brilliantly, is it might be even enjoyable. Thanks for watching.